Okay, and so I'll make this presentation available to you afterwards, but let's go. Let's get right into it. And feel free. I hope we'll have time for Q&A at the end. So some of the things I want to talk about. So I see a lot of people here who are still doing coursework. And so this webinar is offered for those who primarily are done with coursework and it was like, okay, we're done. But over the years, Dr. Chang and I have thought about how can we continue to support students once they're done. And so we're offering these webinars as a way of encouraging you. And I also want to share with you what I have come to know about writing personally, misconceptions and my personal perspective, and then how can we work towards getting the dissertation done. And this is a strategy I use for almost everything in my life. What, why, how? And I want to focus on these three things: developing a habit of writing, setting SMART goals, and WAGs. And then as a bonus, I'm going to share with you an approach that I have stumbled on that works for me in terms of doing a literature review. Mercy's coming in. And this is not something that I share in my class. I'm sure if you're a leader and you know there's stuff that you learn from the textbook, and then there's stuff that when you get out into the real world, you're like, hey, this isn't working. And so this is what I've done. So this is what I want to share with you for how I get the writing done with having a business, being a professor, serving on boards and committees. We just got a puppy and I have 2 daughters who I'm homeschooling. So I'm in the trenches with you. I know exactly what it's like. So here's a little bit about me outside of Eastern. Where are they now? So in addition to teaching, I serve as a journal editor for a journal. I'm currently just began writing another book with Dr. Chang and Dr. Bilgin. And over this summer, I wrote another book, which I didn't intend to write. I wrote an article that I was asked to write, and I wrote a book chapter. And no, I'm not Superwoman, but this is part of what I do. And so it is in that context that I share with you that what I want you to get out of this, if you come into writing your dissertation with the mindset like, I just want this to be done, let it be as painless as possible. That is not the approach. To do a doctorate, a PhD, is to recognize that you're being called to develop a habit of scholarship. And if that's not what you signed up for, sorry, it's too late. And you're in the program and we're not letting you out. So with that mindset, are you going to just do a crash diet and be done with it? And that doesn't work. I've been there, I've done that, you know? But how can you set yourself up to become a lifelong writer and scholar? And by that, I don't mean that you have to go write more dissertations, but you have a responsibility, even while you're in the program, to write on blogs, sign up for Medium, go to Huffington Post, comment in LinkedIn. You have a responsibility to become part of the scholarly community. And so it's with that premise that I'm beginning this session telling you, okay, so how are we going to do this? How are we going to do this? How are we going to develop this habit? We're not going to do the crash and burn. We're not going to do the cabbage diet of writing. We're not going to do any of that, okay? We are going to figure out how can we really apply ourselves so that scholarship becomes part of what we do. And I know some of you here, I know Josh is writing, and I know Nicole has written, Miriam is writing. And so how can Kelly has written stuff and sent it out. So how can we do that? So I said, this is just a funny little thing, no more webinars. Well, yes, because we want to create a community of scholars. And so, yes, this is one of the first ones. Let me put this aside. Here's what I know about writing that I've learned over the years, that I want to share with you, that there's some misconceptions about writing. And number one, oh, this is so, I'm just going to make this smaller. Yeah. Number one is to make progress, I need huge blocks of time. That's wonderful to have. And I wish I had it too. But the reality is, most of us may not have that. And so, even if you don't have huge blocks of times, you can still do it. It's how J.K. Rowling wrote her book, in bits and pieces in restaurant while she was holding on a job. A little progress each day adds up to big results. And yes, it would be wonderful to have a retreat and all of that. And if you can do it, great. But there is a way to structure your life so that if you have small blocks, you can still do it. So that's one misconception, that I want you to just nix, okay? Because others have done it with big chunks and with little chunks. I can't write yet because I have not read enough. I think when I started writing, I really would feel that way, that, I don't know enough and I can't write. But writing is like a muscle. And so writing is a way of thinking. Start writing no matter what. And I like this quote that says, the water does not flow until the faucet is turned on. And this is so useful, and it's so important to realize. And as we go through, I'm going to show you a warm-up exercise that's really helpful. The way you write is to begin writing. And even if you write one awful, terrible sentence or one paragraph per day, that is how the water starts flowing. And then I just don't have the time. I've looked at my schedule, all the things I'm trying to do. I just don't have the time. We make time for what's important to us, and we find the time. Busy is a choice. And that's a hard lesson that I have had to learn. If we are busy and we're not getting this dissertation done, we signed up for this, okay? Then something, somewhere, we have to do an audit and say, well, what am I prepared to give up to get this done? For the short term, how can I readjust so that I can get this done? And so this book that I told you about that I wrote this summer, I had a book contract, and I'm being very transparent here. I have a book contract. It's probably been about 9 years. I've lost track of how many years it's been. And he keeps writing me every year to ask me what's happening. And the truth is that I've moved away from that line of scholarship. And so I just don't prioritize it. And so this year I'm coming up with a decision if I'm just going to say, you know what, I'm just not going to do this. I'm just not going to do that. But I started writing another book. And when COVID struck, I was like, there's just no way. My kids were home. Work was all over the place. And so I sat down and I thought about how much I really wanted to write. And I said, okay, what can I do to make time to write? And I decided to get up at 5 a.m. every morning and write for an hour. That meant that I would go to bed earlier and I would write. I would get up early and I would write. And I did that consistently for about a month. And 50,000 words later, I am done. And it's not rocket science. That's the kind of audit you have to do in your life to say, hey, What do I need to adjust here to get this done? What can I get some time out of to get it done? And so for getting the dissertation done, I want to walk you through and think with you, how can you make space in your busy life, and how can you reprioritize to get it done? So we're all agreed on the what. And for those of you who are not yet at the dissertation phase, I hope you're thinking about publishing, about writing. So you need to get the dissertation done. You need to get the article done. So we agreed on that. Why? And I want you to just think about that personally. I've known lots of students who just abandoned the journey. Perhaps you know some of them, but you are here, and there's a driving purpose or a reason why you decided to get to this point and you're going to complete. So you have to have that why in front of you. For me, my obligation as a PhD scholar is that I have to contribute. It's a responsibility, it's a stewardship issue. To whom much is given, much is required. So what is your why? Know what your why is and have it before you. If you just have a vision for your life, or even if you, especially if you have children, you want them to see you start and complete something, or you want to make a contribution. This is important to you. So your why is the thing that's going to keep you going. And so that's personal. What I'm here to help you with is the how. The how. So we're all agreed on the what. The what is a dissertation, or it's some kind of article. And the why is personal. Why are you doing this? This is such a crazy time in the world. What is the thing that keeps you going? Why is this meaningful to you? And sit with that for a while, because that's what's going to keep you going. Now, the how to. So this is where I come in. But I just want you to sit with that for a minute. You know, why? Why? Because you could be doing a lot of other things, right? Why are you doing this? And that's the key right there. So the how to. So I began by talking about the importance of viewing this journey that you're on as an opportunity to develop a habit of writing. And there's some strategies, and there's some tried and true steps that have been taken by others that you can apply to develop this habit. And then we're going to talk about SMART goals, and then we're going to talk about WAGs, Writing Accountability Group. And then, as I said in the end, I'm going to share with you a hack that I have come up with to help me writing in my busy life. So let's talk about the habit of writing. So if you've read, and I know you probably bought a lot of different books, Write Your Dissertation, 15 minutes a day, Destination Dissertation, all kinds of stuff, right? Let me tell you, you got to understand yourself. And so I'm not going to give you a key, but you got to understand yourself. What kind of writer are you? And so the analogy I want to use here, just because it's probably familiar to most of us, is the losing weight. What kind of person are you if you had to lose weight? You know, there's some people who they will get up early in the morning and exercise. They will go really serious and they'll just no carbs, right? But that's not me. I love carbs. So I'm going to come up with something else. So you have to spend some time thinking about that. I'm a morning person. I get up early. And so I know that for me, when it comes to writing, I was willing to sacrifice going to bed earlier at night and getting up at 5. And Hemingway does this. There's a book called The 5 a.m. Breakfast Club. I encourage you to read that. There's what was it? Miracle Morning. That's another book that talks to you about how you can write in the morning. And I have to tell you, I believe that this is the secret. I believe this is the answer, but I'm not going to sell you on it because some people are night people. I've heard Malcolm Gladwell say he's a night person, right? But you have to know what kind of writer you are and take a note of that. So if you're a morning person, then you're a morning person. But you can also learn morning. And I'm going to push for the morning because in the morning your mind is fresh, you're not tired, you can get it out of the way. And this is what Hal says in Miracle Morning, that you determine what I'm calling the new 9 to 5. You go to bed at 9 and you get up at 5. And most of us, we're not traveling to work, so you have some time to decide, I'm going to write for half an hour, I'm going to write for 1 hour. But are you an evening person? Do you like to write in big chunks? So ultimately, what kind of writer are you? And I'm just going to stop here for a minute just so I can get you in the conversation. So maybe somebody can jump in. What kind of writer are you? Do you know your style and your type? Anybody? Just give me a break.
I'll go. I am not a morning person, although I wish I was. And I tend to write in blocks at night. But it's funny because I read The Miracle Morning. My niece recommended it about 2 years ago, and I did it until the pandemic started, and I was working from home. And my habits have gotten really, really bad since I've been working from home, in that I sleep later in the morning. I'm hitting the snooze later because I'm working from home. And so when you mentioned the Miracle Morning, I have to get back on that because I was so effective when I was doing that, and I'm not a morning person.
Right. And that's what he says. He says a lot of people say that and then they end up doing it. Thank you for sharing that. Anybody else?
Hi, this is Miriam. I think my writing styles change. Well, I know they did. I know my writing styles changed between coursework to dissertation pandemic style, because the shift was real. I remember during the coursework phase, I called myself a weekend warrior. I could literally block off weekends and do a 10-hour marathon. And I would research and write and research and write. I would do a 10 to 10 day on Saturdays. And it felt very natural in the coursework phase. That is not the reality in the dissertation phase. You actually burn out faster trying to do it that way. But for me, at the different stages of the process, I found that evenings, when I blocked off 7 to 10, I would tell the entire family I'm on lockdown, and you really have to enlist your family to really respect that period of time. That 7 to 10, I need this time to myself. So, and then as you get closer, I guess, you shift according to what needs to be done. But so I do a 7 to 10 is my prime writing time. I start to fade after 11. I need to go to sleep. And I'm definitely not a 2 a.m. writer. Some folks are good at that. That's not me. Right. But I know my prime writing time is in the evenings between 7 and 10.
Thank you, Miriam. Thank you. And so, yes, I appreciate you guys sharing that. So that's one of my things in coming into this. I'm not telling you what time to do. You have to know yourself. What I would say is I would go down actually to the second one, understand your changing circumstances. And so sometimes you have to change and you have to adjust. So like for me, I get up every morning and I exercise. But sometimes, if I don't get it, I will do it in the afternoon. But my prime time is in the morning. In the afternoon, then I just find more excuses to not get it done. But so as circumstances change, as we're all going through COVID, yes, you can make some adjustment. But The habits of people who consistently write well and continue to do scholarship is that they move to number 3. They cultivate this writing habit that remains constant and consistent, whatever that is for you. And that involves, the first one I have is you do a warm-up exercise. I'll share that on another slide. You do some kind of warm-up exercise. And this sounds really, really silly, but it's kind of like exercising where you stretch and you get your body ready. The warm-up exercise is an opportunity for you to get your writing muscles going. You just don't, because sometimes when you sit there thinking, you're like, oh, that doesn't sound right. Oh. And you just keep going around in circles. But in a distraction-free environment, you set your mind loosely on your dissertation or a point or section you've been thinking about. I'm not talking about anything specific. And then you set a timer for 5 minutes and you think about, what do I want to say about transformational leadership? What was I thinking about my topic? What was I thinking about the participants? What, and you write for 5 minutes as fast as you can. You just let it go. And when the timer stops, you would have warmed up. And often when I do that, I find that I begin to develop a train of thought just from that process. So that's one way to start developing a habit, just like exercising. You do a warm up, 5 minutes nonstop, just to get yourself started. And then you do your writing workout. You do your workout. You write consistently, same time, choose a place, and you determine the length of time. Now, you don't have to choose the same place, but what happens when you choose the same place, your body, your mind knows that it's time to write and you can get into it more quickly. Let me tell you, when I was doing the get up at 5 a.m., I would jump out of bed because I knew exactly what I wanted to write that morning. I had it all, it was coming together. So you write consistently, same place, choose a place and the length of time. Write this distraction free. I cannot restate this with notifications, with Facebook, with social media. It's very hard to stay focused with looking up articles while you're reading. You end up going down a rabbit trail. So, and please feel free to interrupt me. I have found this app to be very helpful, and there are many others. This one is called Promo Focus. It's a free app, and you can set it to whatever you want. I usually do, sometimes I do 30 minutes. You write for 30 minutes, and then you get a 5-minute break. And my 5-minute break is to go on Facebook. I kid you not. My 5-minute break is to go on Facebook, see who was saying what, go downstairs, stretch my leg, and come back. And then you continue. You can do 4 rounds, you can do 5 rounds, but it's very rewarding because you know at the end of 25 or 30 minutes, you can reward yourself. It's also called the Pomodoro timer. Have you guys heard of that? It's very useful. And when I really get into my writing flow, I will set it for 1 hour because the 30 minutes just seems like it's going by too fast for me and it's interrupting me. And after 4 rounds, you can get a 10-minute or a 20-minute break. So helpful. It sounds so simple, but it's really helpful because you can do almost anything in 25 or 15-minute slots, right? So write in a distraction-free environment, get your equipment. I mean, it's really a habit. So you would know, I'm sure you have a RefWorks manager and you keep building on those because if this is going to be the habit that you're developing for life, these are going to be your resources. You want that manager to always be there. Have a writing program if you need one. I shared with my class, I used Scrivener. I found it so very helpful. It had a very steep learning curve, but the way it is set up, the way I would have to show you, and that would probably be another time. I think we're probably going to do one of those in the digital tools. It's the way my mind works when I think about my dissertation. I think Callie is using it. Callie, have you started it? Could you share a little bit about your experience with it? Or even if you're not that far along?
Well, I will say it is a little steep learning curve, but since I'm just at the beginning of my process, I'm finding it so helpful to record notes and build my outline for the rest of my dissertation. Because as I work on my concept paper, there are things that I know don't fit there. And so I was just going to say thumbs up for Scrivener. Definitely seems like a great application for keeping things organized and then having flexibility to move things around.
Right.
So it's fantastic.
Anybody else? Thank you, Kelly. Anybody else uses Scrivener? Or something else? I was introduced to Papers by someone who used Mac. I haven't used it. Does anybody use Papers? No? But anyway, if you are interested, like I said, in developing this habit, you need a reference manager where you're building your library, and you need an application, if possible, that's going to make your work easier. With a dissertation or with a book, the file system in Microsoft Word, it gets really unwieldy, moving stuff around. Where was I? Which revision is this? And those kinds of things. And so investigate. You guys are doing this in a great age. Investigate anything that can make your life easier with Scrivener. And I don't get any money for saying this. I was just so happy that it helped me. I'm just sharing. Anything you delete goes into the trash. It's not deleted. You can log how many hours you write. You can log. You can keep a log of what you're doing. So I saw some people commenting. I'm going to keep going if you want to respond to each other, and I'll check it out afterwards. So, and then you need a notes and files system where you're going to store your PDF, where you're going to keep your notes. And with Scrivener, you can keep your notes there as you read. So this is the habit, right? This is the habit that I'm talking about. How are you going to warm up? What's going to be your writing routine? You determine. My exercise routine is I walk and on one day, and then I alternate riding on the other day. And I do this 5 days a week. So if you're thinking about writing, you research on one day, you think on another day, you outline, and then you write on another day. What's your routine going to be? Are you going to do 25 minutes per day? Are you going to do 25 minutes 3 days a week? But consistency is important, and until it becomes automatic, and that's what you're going for, right? And then check out Promo Focus, or just check out Pomodoro anywhere online. They have lots of free apps. I have found it very helpful to keep me focused because I tend to get distracted when I'm writing anything but write. Right? And then keep a log. Keep a log. I'm going to share a little bit about that. The time that you spend researching, the time that you spend thinking, the times that you actually spent writing, it's all part of writing, but you want to keep a log, and then break down the task into manageable writing chunks or SMART goals. So let me go forward, because what I really want to share with you, so I shared this, is the hack for the literature review. So I had a SMART chart right here, but I think you guys are familiar with it. So, but the SMART acronym is so useful. So every week you have a specific goal. I'm going to read 2 articles, and I'm going to take notes on both articles by Friday. Specific, measurable, attainable. It's something that you can do. Some weeks I don't put anything because I know I just know what I'm going through. I can't do it. Specific, measurable, attainable, relevant. You can't keep reading forever. So after you read a couple of articles, write. And time bound. So that's what SMART stands for: specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time bound. For some reason, I lost the photo, but so this is a manual way that you could go about recording and keeping track of what you write, the days that you write, the number of minutes you spent writing, the number of words for this, and you can do it in an Excel spreadsheet. But it's useful to see how your time is being used up over time. I'm going to hide this. Can I hide this? Just give me 1 minute. I can't hide it. I hate you guys. Okay, so this is an example of someone who kept an account of how they were writing over time. I can't see you guys. Just give me a minute. I want to see people. Oh, there you are. Perfect. So this is useful. I think it's useful for me. It happens for me automatically in Scrivener. If I see maybe some people are still looking at that, set up a system that works for you so you see what you're actually doing and you can keep an account of it. And also keep in mind, it's also important to have time off, to have those breaks so that you don't have burn off. So you see those off days. Okay, moving along. Build in accountability and support. The times when I have been most productive, I have had accountability. Now, generally, I'm a person, I don't need somebody to exercise with. I go exercising by myself. But I've found that with writing, it's very helpful for me to have accountability. So this book that we're working on, we meet every month. And that forces me, sometimes it's 2 days before, the week before, to spend some time doing my part. And so for you, if it's with your dissertation chair, that's one thing, but I want to strongly encourage you to have a writing accountability group. So we call it a WAG. It's an active writing group that meets X times regularly. It exists to help people establish good writing habits. It's focused on developing a process and habit of writing. And the focus is just accountability. This is not where you exchange stuff and you read and tell me what I did. So in the Dissertation Writing Circle, we have that accountability group where every week we post our SMART goals and we report back to the group. It's not as powerful as if you find 2 or 3 people in your circle who are on the same path as you, and you kind of work with them to be accountable to each other. But within the Dissertation Circle, we have, something that has evolved where some students have gotten together, especially with COVID, and every night they write together. They use Zoom. And they start and they say, hi, how are you doing? How's your day? Whatever. And then they write for 1 hour, 2 hours. And at the end, they talk. We also have that on Saturday and Sunday. Now, in my own life, the way I have applied this is I have a friend who is in the academy just like me. And if you're thinking about somebody who you know, probably not at Eastern, we email each other a message at the start of the week. And we say, hey, or you can do 2 weeks. This is what I'm working on this week. And then at the end of the period, we just email each other back and say, hey, I didn't do it, or I did this happened, or whatever. And with this book that I told you I just wrote, I did that with a friend of mine who was also working a book, and we both completed the draft together. What is that? Okay, so I'm not telling you anything. I'm not peddling what I don't practice. And so I have found it very helpful to help me get it done. So again, know yourself. Not everybody needs this. And like I said, I'm pretty much of a loner with my writing, but I found this very helpful to help me getting over the hump. And I also did this for my dissertation. I had a friend, she's Jewish, and we call ourselves twins because we held each other accountable all the way down to the end. And if you talk to some people in the program, we're still friends today. She was at my wedding. She's actually written this book, Finish Your Dissertation, Don't Let It Finish You. And I brought her to talk to classes sometime, but we did that together and we finished together. So if that's something that works for you, it really does work. So with all of that said, what I hope you will come to accept tonight is that you've signed up to be a writer, whether you knew it or not. And the dissertation is just the start of the journey. So you need to start committing to understanding who you are and develop, how are you going to develop that habit? This is not going to be a crash and burn, but how can you develop that habit? And some of the things I spoke about was, what are you going to do? Something has to give, right? So for me, it's giving up my crime shows at night. Giving up my crime shows. It's just going to be for a while, and then go to bed early and get up early. And I have the evidence to prove that it works. And so perhaps you don't want to do that drastic measure, but can you give up 1 or 2 days a week? Can you do what Miriam does? Can you do on weekends? Can you do 2 25-minute segments like I showed you with the promo focus? Come up with your strategy for how you are going to get it done. So that's that. I hope you found that inspiring, and you can loop back with me. There is no magic formula, but I'm just telling you what works for others and what works for me. But I really want to share this strategy with you that I stumbled into because I found that I was I was always a bit, I felt overwhelmed every time I would think about a literature review. And guess what? You got to do it over and over again for every article. And I was teaching, I'm teaching you guys, and I'm teaching 700 right now. And we talked about the concept map, and we talked about the literature review matrix, and we talked about the notes page for each article. We talked about all of that. But what I found was that when I did that, it wasn't quite working for me. So I would do all of this. I would do a concept map. I would do a literature review matrix. I would do a notes page for each article, and I would keep my reference list as I go. Does anybody know what I'm talking about? Does this sound similar to something that you do as you're doing? Yes, no? You can respond in the chat box. Let me see what people are saying. Find people roughly at the same stage. Yes, we do. Great book. Okay, so I don't see anybody responding on that. But this was the approach that I was using, and I found that practically it wasn't working for me when I had to write my article. I would have the concept map. I would do the literature review. I would do a notes page. I would take notes for each article, and I would make a reference list as I was going. So this was the concept map. Let's just say hypothetically. And then for each of those concepts, I would find articles, I would take notes, and I would make my reference list as I was going along. And this was the literature review matrix. I would do something like this, where I would say what the article was about, and so on and so on. And so eventually I would have so many of these. I would just have way too much, and I just couldn't remember who said what when, and I would be spending a whole lot of time just going back to that. So the pros was that it helped me to get organized, and I did have a list of relevant sources, and it was a strategy for getting through it. But these are the things that I found were difficult. It was a seemingly unlimited reading. And I had a long list of articles and notes, but I still had to work to put it all together. And it took long to read, take notes. By the time I got to write, I forgot what was in those notes in the first place. So it felt like I was not making progress in the reading phase. So if you're writing your literature review and you're getting articles, you're reading, you're taking notes, but it's like you're not making progress. And so I started doing this approach based on an adaptation of what I read in Destination Dissertation, which is a book that I recommend for 910, in 4 phases. And this is what I use right now for my writing. Phase 1, read for understanding of the field. And I just find 2 or 3 good comprehensive sources. I don't find 20. I find 2 or 3. Phase 2, I do a skeleton outline, gathering sources from phase 1. And I put that into a reference manager like RefWorks or Zotero or what have you. In phase 3, I begin skimming and note-taking, writing, and compiling reference lists for chapter 2 with outline. And then in phase 4, I write, and I'm going to go through each in turn, and then I begin writing and rewriting. Okay. So let me walk you through how it works for me. So this is not the book that I wrote. This is another book that I'm writing. So this is a book I'm writing about how to live a more balanced life. And so Ariana Huffington has written this book called Thrive. It's a trade book, but she has excellent sources in there, a lot of good research. So I began with 2 or 3 sources very close to my work. I did hers. I can't remember what else I did. It was so long ago. But in your case, if you're doing a dissertation, find 2 or 3 quality dissertation, recent dissertation, and skim chapter 1, but read chapter 2. Because chapter 2 is like a bank, it's like a bank where it has all of the good stuff that you need. And so, and then you can find a quality recent book report. And what you're really looking for in those books is that you're just reading for understanding. You're just trying to understand the field because there's a lot to understand. And so then also you're looking at the reference list because that reference list is what you're going to need to move you on to the next phase. Okay. So you find 2 or 3. And then in phase 2, based on what you've read and the understanding that you have, the broad understanding of the field, you gather sources from chapter 2 and you write a tentative outline of chapter 2. So you outline what are the key, and I have here, right? You have an intro and then you have 3 or 4 broad areas with subdivisions. So just 3 or 4 areas with subdivisions, and then the last section of chapter 2 is usually the gaps in the literature summarized, and then your conclusion, right? So the intro, with your understanding of what you read, you could do the intro, but where you have to do the research is the body, which is those 3 to 4 broad areas with subdivision. So, and this is something I teach students. I spend a lot of time on the statement of the problem, because if you do a good statement of the problem, it really gives you the outline for chapter 2, right? So are you following? We're good? So you have these 3 broad areas with subdivision. In phase 3, you begin taking notes for each heading or subheading on note cards. I usually have a separate page. Or I have a file. Let's say one of the subheadings is busyness, the curse of busyness, right? I begin taking notes on that, just on that, right? The example I have here, let's say if we go back to the 3 broad areas, let's say one of the areas is definitions of servant leadership, how they differ. Then I begin taking notes only on that. And then, so this is the key. You take a book, you look at the table of contents or index for relevant section. You are not reading the entire book. You're just reading to find what? The definition of servant leadership. And this is where this is where a lot of us get slowed down because we want to read the whole book. No, no, no. You're reading to get the definition of servant leadership. So you take the book, you look at the table of contents, look at the index, you read, skim those sections quickly. You take a verbatim quote, you put the page number and the date, and you go through all the sources that can help you with this section or subsection alone. Alone. And then when you're done with that, you move to the second subsection. You move to the third, right? But you don't have to do them all in one, because what happens is you need wins. You need wins. WINS. So when I'm finished with this section, definition of servant leadership, and I've taken notes, then you can move to phase 4. Okay, I'm still continuing to do this for all sections. Once you feel relatively satisfied with the notes for that section, draft that section. Draft that section alone. Review your notes, organize them to write that section, and keep updating your reference list as you work. And so with this approach, what it helps you to see is that you can write in 25-minute slots, because you don't need a whole day. If you've taken the notes, you can sit down and write that section on definition of servant leadership. And you can call it a day. And then the next day you can write, maybe your next subsection is applications of it in the corporate setting. You've taken all your notes and now you can write that section. And then phase 4 is when you have all the sections drafted and you can put it together as a whole, rewrite, reorganize, a bit of flow, etc., and so on and so on. So that's my approach that I'm using, and I find it efficient, effective, because notice, if you notice, you don't spend as much time reading, just reading. When you go to the sources, you are going for specific information. And that is the key, because we live in an age of ubiquitous information. You're going to those sources for specific information, and that will help you. So that's all I have to say about that. And I do hope that you found some of this helpful, and I will be happy to share my presentation notes with you. But let's stop here. We have a few minutes, if I can stop it. Yes, we have a few minutes. Are there any questions? Now, there's a lot more I can say, but I wanted to focus just on writing strategies. There's a lot about reviewing and working with chairs and the revisions and so on. But just to get you to see that you can do this. You can do this if you make it a priority and think about how you can get it done. Okay, so any questions?
I have a comment, not a question.
Yes.
One of the things that I know for me, the writing process is the technical piece. I think there's also the emotional connection of